I'm Liz Faublas, and this is Currents. Tonight, we begin with the clash of civilizations, the battle between Christianity and radical Islam. The professors and pundits proclaim the phrase not appropriate, but reality tells a different story. On the streets of London tonight, Scotland Yard is hunting a gang of Muslim vigilantes, thugs carving out sections of the city as their own, calling them Muslim areas. And beware anyone who walks down the wrong street.
Hello, mate. Mate, don't you know this is a Muslim area? Look at you. What's wrong with your face, mate? What's wrong with your face? Why are you dressed like that for? Why are you dressed like that for?
Why are you bothering me? I'm not
Because you're walking through a Muslim area. You're walking through a Muslim area dressed like a fag, mate. You need to get out of here.
I am getting out.
Yeah, get out of here quicker then. Get out of here quicker then. You're dirty, mate.
Well, the terrified man, after admitting to being homosexual, was able to leave the area without being injured. Now, besides the Scotland Yard investigation, London police are looking at another video from the same Muslim vigilantes. In that one, white women are called animals. Meantime, al-Qaeda terrorists, the most extreme Muslims, are attacking the symbols of Christianity inside the African nation of Mali. The terrorists are trying to take over the country and turn it into a Muslim stronghold. The French military have landed inside Mali to fight against them. For a week, the French battled al-Qaeda in the town of Diabli. Al-Qaeda had come not just to take the town, but to take away the faith found there.
Daniel Canoti, Protestant pastor in this dusty little town, is returning to his home for the first time since he and his family were forced to flee. Neighbors say the Islamist fighters who overran Diabli were on their way to kill the pastor. When they arrived at his empty house, they scrawled an Islamic creed on his walls. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. They also defaced his church, shooting down the cross from the rooftop and beheading the statues of Jesus and the Virgin Mary. This was an organized and reinforced front, a mix of local and al-Qaeda militants. They were driven out by Malian forces attacking on the ground behind air support provided by the French. It took a week of intense fighting. Remnants of the battle can be seen everywhere. French soldiers go house by house, looking for unexploded ordnance.
We must be careful with them, and they are well equipped and well trained, so it's a good adversary.
The Malian commander is exhausted. The only way I can describe the fighters is as Allahu Akbar, coming at you, he tells us, a reference to the Islamic battle cry. The colonel told us the militants were well equipped with weapons smuggled from Libya, following the overthrow of longtime dictator Muammar Gaddafi, including some more advanced than he'd ever seen before. Still, he says, the Malian army will continue its fight north.
We are Malian military. We've opted for a military life. Our principle is to safeguard the national integrity of Mali. We'll do that no matter what the price.
But even tougher than taking territory is holding it. These are Malian armoured vehicles abandoned when this camp fell to the Islamists. It's now back in government-controlled hands, but this really gives you a sense of how closely fought over every inch of territory here is and how often it's been changing hands. Mali's forces are poorly equipped and poorly experienced. Part of France's mission is to help build Mali's military strength so that it can then leave this fight to Mali's army. Diabli is just one small town in this long divided country, and the territory held by the Islamists is vast. The push further north is likely to be a much tougher challenge. Naim Al-Bagir, CNN, Diabli, Mali.
On the other side of the globe, 6 Catholic schools in Indonesia have succumbed to threats from the Muslim government and will now teach the Quran in the schools. The all-powerful state had warned they would close the schools if the Catholics did not give in and teach Islam. The schools range from kindergarten to high school. And a law intended to protect Islam and often used to persecute Christians in Pakistan, the blasphemy laws led to the assassination of a Catholic leader on the streets of the country's capital. The murdered man was a Pakistani minister working inside the government to protect the religious freedoms of Christians. Now his brother, Paul Botti, has come to New York, following in his brother's footsteps, fighting for religious freedom. We met him in Midtown's Manhattan Center.
Tonight we're in the Grand Ballroom, which acts as the center of the New York Encounter, a 3-day cultural festival here in the greatest city in the world, New York. And each year we gather to celebrate a particular theme that can help us deepen our faith, deepen our understanding of faith's impact on culture and on the human spirit. The theme of this year is freedom. To invite Dr. Botti to speak, that was an easy choice because the story of his brother and his own work in Pakistan is simply extraordinary.
Pakistan's Minority Affairs Minister Shahbaz Bhatti was shot dead on Wednesday morning. Bhatti had been a vocal critic of blasphemy laws. Bhatti was on his way to work in the Pakistani capital Islamabad when unknown gunmen riddled his car with bullets.
It was his idea and mission for which he lived and hoped to see a society in Pakistan where everybody is free to express his faith, and he lived for this ideal and laid down his life for this ideal. He never feared to express his faith in an extremist society like Pakistan. He never negotiated even on that. He never negotiated his love for the poor.
To see a man who so willingly shed his blood for the faith in a situation that, just for me to think about, inspires so much fear. It was truly moving.
I think here in America we really take our freedom for granted, and being part of the one universal Catholic Church, it brings a closer awareness to the sufferings of others.
I've never heard a story like this. Men like Dr. Botti can change the world because of his certainty about religious freedom and how he and his countrymen can come together.
It was very enlightening for me to hear what he had to say, particularly the struggle that he had with his own experience of freedom in order to follow what it meant to be involved in the political process.
We all are equal as a human being. We have the same need, we have same wishes. So this is the religious value or faith which was his teaching, and he acted according to that. So the same, I think, for us, for me, to continue his mission.
Just as Christ's sacrifice goes beyond what we can understand. It's bigger than we can understand. How it saves the world, we don't understand. But that man's life participates in saving the world. Of that, I'm sure.
Shahbaz Bhatti was gunned down by the Pakistani Taliban. The Muslim assassin of the Pope's representative in Turkey now is being sentenced to 15 years in jail. Bishop Luigi Padavisi's throat was slashed more than 2 years ago. The killer was also the bishop's car driver. After the assassination, witnesses report the murderer shouted, "Allah Akbar, God is great." The church had asked for a more thorough investigation of the killing. Turkey's Muslim government refused. Up next, the TV anchor who holds the key to Israel's future. Details as Currents continues after the break. Welcome back. Tonight, we do not know who leads Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu is scrambling to keep his job as prime minister. After yesterday's national elections, he may not have enough support. The final vote is not yet official, but at this moment, the Netanyahu forces have the same number of votes as his opponents. If the tie remains, the deciding vote could fall to 90-year-old Shimon Peres, the country's president, normally a figurehead. After the polls closed last night, a tired Netanyahu appeared on Israeli TV.
Thank you to the citizens of Israel. You have once again proved that Israel is a vibrant, dynamic democracy.
And thanks to that democracy, a man almost completely unknown in this country is now one of the most powerful political leaders in Israel. At the start of yesterday's voting, Yair Lapid was a former TV news anchorman. Tonight, the Israeli newspaper Haaretz is reporting Mr. Lapid could be the next prime minister.
Who is Yair Lapid? a former journalist, talk show host, amateur boxer, listed among Israel's sexiest men. And after Tuesday's election, Lapid is also the newest, brightest star on the political scene. His party, Yesh Atid, winning an astonishing 18 seats in parliament, an upset that makes Lapid the most wanted partner in any coalition.
The state of Israel is standing in front of uneasy challenges. We're facing economic crises that threaten to destroy the Israeli middle class, facing a world that will boycott us because of the diplomatic freeze, and facing the breakdown of social equality. There is only one way that we can face those challenges: together.
But what do Lapid and his party stand for?
Together with you, we can change the priorities in this country.
Yesh Atid translates into there is a future. The party's platform, however, is decidedly domestic. Affordable housing, improving education, and their hot-button issue, putting an end to the exemption from mandatory military service for ultra-Orthodox Jews. There is much less on how to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but in interviews, Lapid has proposed Israel should give up much of the West Bank while retaining control of Jerusalem. For many Israeli voters, Lapid represents the modern secular voice of Israel, and his strong showing in the polls brings the center back into Israeli politics. Benjamin Netanyahu remains the front-runner to be prime minister, but Yair Lapid now has the political clout to choose between becoming the key partner in a Netanyahu-led coalition or leading the opposition. Either way, after this election night, Yair Lapid and Yesh Atid are a new force to be reckoned with. Atika Schubert, CNN, Jerusalem.
The final vote totals are expected tomorrow. Whoever wins will face serious issues, from Iran's nuclear weapons threat to the unrest spreading across the Middle East, born from the uprisings of the so-called Arab Spring. Now, there's another uprising, perhaps the most ominous yet, brewing inside Saudi Arabia, with the remarkable sight of the black burqa-clad women taking to the streets in protest.
The gathering was small, its impact potentially huge. Here, long-simmering anger shatters longer-standing cultural taboos. In the ultra-conservative heartland of Saudi Arabia, where women are struggling to gain their own rights, these mothers, daughters, sisters, and wives ventured out, many with their children, demanding the rights they say their loved ones have been denied. Demonstrating in the town of Buraida, calling for the release of relatives they say have been jailed for years without access to lawyers, never having been tried. In a country where protests are prohibited, it didn't take long for the police to show up. This amateur video posted on YouTube appears to show security forces encircling the women. According to Amnesty International, 18 women and 10 children were arrested. Residents were quick to plead for their release. In this video, a woman cries as she secretly films riot police outside the jail where some of the women were reportedly taken. Disbelief heard in the voice of a man asking why women and children would have been detained. Outrage grew quickly, leading to even more demonstrations. Here, Buraida again. Not just a march, a declaration, chanting they do not fear the country's interior minister, demanding he release the women, announcing their arrest a red line that should never have been crossed. Activists say small protests spread to other cities. In Riyadh, the country's capital, they called for the release of the women and children. In Mecca, the kingdom's religious capital, they called for the release of political prisoners. Activists say many are held in connection with the country's counter-terrorism efforts, those charges disputed by their relatives. The protests, an extraordinary development in an absolute monarchy intolerant of dissent. The Interior Ministry told CNN all the women arrested in Buraida have now been released along with their children. As for the other detainees, the government says it can't comment on ongoing cases. Activists and families are vowing to continue calls for their release. And in this deeply conservative country where women are expected to stay silent, it's their voices that may turn out to be the loudest.
Coming up next, protests against a disgusting video message. Details next on Currents. 24 Catholic schools are being closed in the New York Archdiocese. The schools are located in Manhattan, the Bronx, and the northern suburbs. 2 are high schools and 22 elementary schools, including the alma mater of Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. More than 4,300 students are affected. Meantime, the New York City Council has decided to celebrate the Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion and the slaughter of 55 million unborn babies. As we reported yesterday, was the 40th anniversary of the infamous Roe v. Wade decision. Well, today, the council passed a resolution that, quote, commemorates the anniversary. The resolution also calls on Congress to provide even more money to fund the killings. Another abortionist development, an outfit known as Center for Reproductive Rights has produced a video applauding abortion and the Roe anniversary. In the spot, a relatively unknown actor named Makad Brooks seems to be speaking to an imaginary character and not a real person.
We're going to be standing right by your side today, tomorrow, and the years to come. Because that is how much you mean to me, baby. To us. To all of us. So with that, happy anniversary, baby. Looking good for 40.
Even pro-abortion advocates have condemned the video as sleazy. Well, the supporters of life, meantime, are preparing to assemble in Washington on Friday for the March for Life. As part of the massive celebration, there will be screenings of the pro-life movie Doonby. We reported on the film last year, and it was one of the major showings at NET's annual Faith Film Festival.
Who is this white knight? Sam Doonby. Doonby. We've been trying to check you out. Nobody knows nothing about you, Sam.
You don't know one thing about me.
I know all that I need to know.
I just want to thank you as a family for what you did yesterday.
Don't look!
Touch me!
Sam, do you want to tell me what just happened in there? It looked like you've seen a ghost.
Maybe I have. This whole town is a little crazy.
You ever killed a guy before?
I think I'm falling in love with you, Mr. Doonby.
Sam Doonby, the man from nowhere. This used to be a nice, quiet town till you showed up.
Well, Jen Gotson is one of the film's stars. Recently, she sat down with our news director, Ed Wilkinson, to tell us why Doonby, the March for Life, and the Roe decision are all related.
The reason why Doonby's neat with March of Life is Norma McCorvey. We know the history of Norma. She was Roe versus Wade, and she's the reason why March of Life is now here. Well, since then, she's now become about life and wants to support life, and she's a cameo in the film Doonby. So it's neat how it starts, and now it's a bookend with Doonby showing up to be able to help influence. And NET's sponsoring Doonby being there, so we're so appreciative.
We'll be there with you, and we'll have cameras following you all around.
Oh, boy.
DC.
I'll get my sock puppets out.
How did you get Norma McCorvey to do that film?
Oh, it's a kick. So Peter Mackenzie, our writer-director from London, someone approached him and says, you should get Norma McCorvey. And he's like, why should I get Norma, and who is she? And he learned very soon who she was. He shows up to Smithville, Texas, and they go, well, let me introduce you to her. And he goes, how do I do that? And they literally walked him a couple blocks in a small podunk town in Texas, knocked on Norma's door, and they made an introduction. And from that point, I guess you could say it's history.
Wow. And was she amenable to doing this? I mean,
oh my gosh, absolutely.
Yeah?
She felt like God called her to be in Smithville, Texas, but she never understood why. And when Peter met her and introduced her to the movie, she finally felt like she understands. I'm supposed to be here because of this film. So she feels Doonby is a way that she can give back, because she really supports life right now.
That's a terrific story. That's the working of the Spirit right there.
It's such a blessing. I mean, you just can't see. It's God's providence over that.
While we all have the tendency to think our times are the most important, the fight for life and against abortion is not something unique to our times. The Holy Father once wrote of the monstrous and atrocious brutality of those who have no fear to kill an unborn child still hiding in a mother's womb, and he called for the killers to be restrained. The Pope who authored those words was Sixtus V. He wrote them in the year 1588. Up next, the saints who are only a mouse click away as Currents continues after the break. The chief Vatican spokesman is writing tonight to the Friends of the Elephants, pledging that the Catholic Church has always opposed the use of ivory for any religious or devotional items. Father Federico Lombardi is responding to a National Geographic magazine article regarding the use of ivory by many different religious and the slaughter of African elephants to obtain their tusks. The magazine called on the Vatican to lead the way both against the use of ivory and for the protection of the elephants. The article listed Father Lombardi's email address. The priest said many had written to him to express concern, and not all were particularly kind or profound. Well, besides email, the internet also provides a treasure trove of information about so many topics. Now we see that going online is a good way to learn more about some modern saints.
Not too long ago, the only way to learn more about the physical appearance of saints was through paintings and sculptures. Their written biographies also depicted their lives, as well as theater productions and occasionally films. But as times change, so do the way we learn about some of these saints. We can see them in flesh, hear their voice, and see them in their everyday lives. It's made possible thanks to the internet. Among the millions of videos uploaded to YouTube, you will find a few depicting 20th century saints. This woman is Saint Gianna Beretta from Italy and the patron saint of pregnancy. She decided to postpone a surgery to save her baby's life while pregnant. She died in 1962, but before then, her husband recorded these images in which she appears with her other two children. The devotion to Father Pius extends across the world. It is relatively easy to find his liturgical celebrations or his sermons on YouTube. Father Pius died in 1968. Saint Albert Hurtado is a Chilean priest that died in 1952. He was a writer and worked avidly with the poor and needy. There are also several images of him online. Another saint you will find online is Saint Josemaria Escriva. He died in 1975, and during his last years, his catechesis from Spain and Latin America ended up on video. Saint Josemaria is one of the few saints with his own YouTube account. It includes short videos of him talking about Christian doctrine. They also show off his strong personality.
Y no es poco a su misión espiritual, con los brazos abiertos donde quepan todos. Los de la derecha, los de la izquierda, los de enfrente, los de atrás, todos.
While you won't find real images of other saints on YouTube, there are many devoted to blessed people such as John the 23rd, John Paul II, and Mother Teresa of Calcutta. John Paul II is perhaps the most well-known. On YouTube, you will find many of his speeches or moving moments that show what he was like, such as these images from the clown that made him laugh the most. We can also find images of the first martyred person present on YouTube, Blessed Jerzy Popieluszko. He was killed in Poland during the communist regime. Moving forward, many future saints and blessed individuals will likely gain bigger traction online. It is already the case with two popes declared venerable, Pius XII and Paul VI. American Archbishop Fulton Sheen or Bishop Álvaro del Portillo, the successor to Saint Josemaria. The new technologies add a new dimension to the devotion of saints. From anywhere in the world, it becomes plausible to see them and learn what they're like. It's a new tool to aid the Church in the new evangelization.
And thank you for joining us. We leave you tonight with a celebration more than 500 years in the making. That's how long the Swiss Guard has been protecting the Pope, and yesterday was their anniversary. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.